What's going on, everyone? Today we're here with Jane Elliott. Now, she is a person that has done a lot of great things. I'm pretty sure you've seen her Facebook videos or YouTube videos that's in the millions. A lot of you have made plenty comments to her videos. So we definitely wanted to reach out to her and ask her some questions that a lot of you would like to ask her, including myself. So, Jane, thank you for joining us on the show today.
Well, thank you for having me.
Now, Jane, for some people who don't know about you or never, I was surprised why people don't know about you just yet. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, I'm an elementary school teacher from Riceville, Iowa. The day after Martin Luther King Jr. was killed, I chose to allow my students to walk in the shoes of a child of color in my classroom for a day. I did what we do in this society. I picked out a group of people on the basis of a physical characteristic over which they have absolutely no control. I assigned negative characteristics to them because of that physical characteristic, and that physical characteristic alone. I treated them as though all the negative things I was saying about them were true. And within 15 minutes, I created a microcosm of society in my third grade classroom in all-white, all-Christian Riceville, Iowa. That was the day my education began. That was nearly 50 years ago. That was April 5th, 1968. And for 50 years, I have been doing that exercise based on eye color alone with people of all ages all over the United States and in several other countries.
Now, that test itself, we've watched several videos, and even the when your students had came back, I think was it 15 to 20 years later to sit down with you and experience that, share with everyone. Did that have after the taping of that? What kind of effect did that actually have on your students that some people in white America don't really get to experience?
People in white America practically never experience a whole society against them on the basis of the fact that they are white. They're likely to get that experience within the next 30 years if they aren't very, very careful. Because in this country today, the major fear that is expressed to me when I do a speech to so-called adults in this country is, if people of color get power, aren't they going to want to do to us what we've done to them? And that, if you think about that, that explains Donald Trump, or as I call him, Dinosaurus T. Rump. The reaction to the people in Riceville to my doing the exercise was to abuse my children, to isolate me, to refuse to do business with my parents, and to this day, to 20% of the people in Riceville, I am the town of Riceville's only nigger lover. And they don't say the N-word lover. I know you don't want to hear that word, but they don't say the N-word lover. They say the word that everybody hates to hear because they have to be as demeaning, as disgusting, where I'm concerned, as they can possibly be. The first time I did the exercise, it wasn't filmed. Nobody but the students and I knew what was going on. The second time it was filmed by the Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, and that film has never been shown in this country. The third time it was done, it was filmed by ABC, and that's the film that you see. But you haven't seen the whole film. Most people don't see the whole film. They only see 2 or 3 minutes of it on YouTube. Everybody needs to see that whole film. They need to go to PBS, scroll down to Frontline, then scroll down to A Class Divided, and watch that whole program, that 45 minutes. Spend 45 minutes of your life, white folks particularly, watching that program and seeing what effect that exercise has. After one day, what effect that exercise has on children for the rest of their lives, how it changed their lives, how as adults they can never go back to being what they were before the exercise because of what they learned that day. We were studying an Indian unit the first time I did that exercise, and our lesson plan for the next day was to learn the Sioux Indian prayer that says, "Oh, Great Spirit, keep me from ever judging a man until I've walked a mile in his moccasins." I decided that the next day, not only was I going to teach my students that Sioux Indian prayer, I was going to arrange to have it answered for them. And so I went into my classroom and did what Hitler did. I divided my class according to the color of their eyes, and I learned immediately that I don't want to be tolerated, because on that day, the brown-eyed children were on the top, I'm blue-eyed, and my brown-eyed students tolerated me. For the first time as a teacher, I felt the knowledge of how it feels to be tolerated. I will never push tolerance again. If you want to talk about tolerance as meaning recognizing, appreciating, and valuing people, that's one thing. But in this country, we tolerate people. When we say we tolerate something, it's something we put up with. We tolerate zits when we're young and hot flashes when we're old. We tolerate ugly things that are going to go away. We do not tolerate and must not tolerate people unless you use appreciate, recognize, and value. The things I learned that day I will never forget, and neither will my students. It changed their lives. It changed what they are willing to put up with from teachers who make racist remarks.
Now, you just mentioned teachers that make racist remarks. In the schoolhouses of America, and all of us are indoctrinated with white supremacy. Let's just call it what it is. We don't speak
That's
about.
exactly what, yeah. And we pretend we offer education. We don't offer education. The word education, I'm an educator. The word educator comes from the root duck deuce, which means lead, the prefix e, which means out, the suffix ate, which means the act of, and the suffix or, which means one who does. An educator is one who is engaged in the act of leading people out of ignorance. You do not lead students out of ignorance in this country, and if you do it at the peril of losing your job. I was threatened with the loss of my job numerous times by the members of the school board in Riceville and the people, in some of the 20% of the people in Riceville, and certainly many of the teachers, because I was teaching something that wasn't in the curriculum. I refused to teach white superiority. I refuse to teach white supremacy. I refuse to teach that we have more than one race on this earth. We only have one. You and I are members of the same race. The idea of race was made up about 500 years ago and based on skin color and based on power during the Spanish Inquisition. We've got to wipe that idea out of our students' heads. There's only one race. You and I are members of the same race. I'm a member of your family, whether you like it or not. It's time to start educating students instead of indoctrinating them.
So
Were you going to ask me a question?
so when we look at, not only the school system is indoctrinating them with white supremacy, but it's also like they're really dumbing down the children, especially with the history of this nation. It's like everything that actually happened in this nation, they want to minimize it. It's like, for instance, you talk about, and I hate the term Black History Month, you want to take slavery and say, oh yeah, it's bad, and there was, some textbooks want to say now indentured servants, which that is a lie, and then you want to jump all the way to Martin Luther King like he's the only one. Greatest Dr. King was, he wasn't the only one. And it seems like when you go ahead.
Pardon me for interrupting you, but you said slavery. There's a man running around the country today and getting paid good money for saying that the Civil War is over. We no longer have slavery or segregation in the United States of America. We have reinstituted slavery in this country with our prison industrial complex. Bill Clinton helped that to happen with the 3 strikes and you're outlaw. He needed a place to put black and brown young males. And so he helped somebody, suggested the 3 strikes and you're outlaw. He signed that bill. And we have thousands of young black males and brown males in prison today, in there because of victimless crimes. And if we have enough sense to let them out, now that we've damaged them probably irreparably, they will be disenfranchised for the rest of their lives. If you think for 1 minute that 3 strikes and you're out was an accident, you better take another look. It wasn't. We needed a place for those young black and brown males. Now, we could have said to those young men, look, it'll cost us more to keep you in prison for a year than it will to educate you. If you agree to go to school and learn a trade, you won't have to go to prison. If you don't agree to do this, you're off to prison. Now, what do you want to do? I have a feeling that the vast majority of those young black and brown males would have opted for education and skills so that they could get a job. And then we could have repaired our infrastructure. We could have stopped building prisons and started building schools. But in this country today, we are building more prisons than we do schools, and we are tearing down schools. Now, a prison is a good place to make money. You can employ 300 people in your community if you build a prison outside the city walls. That is not what we ought to be in the business of doing. And I'm really upset that we have a candidate, 2 candidates for the presidency of the United States right now who will adopt that kind of philosophy and that kind of lawmaking. And I'm really angry about this. Okay, I'm a fanatic, no doubt about it. But this country needs some fanatics other than Donosaurus T. Rump.
Now, Donald Trump, my Lord. Now, what people don't even understand.
No, you don't say my Lord and Donald Trump in the same paragraph.
Well, that is more. That's not. Oh, trust me, that's not my Lord. I'm saying.
But I know what you're saying. But he's going to take it out of context and say, "See, this guy thinks I'm his Lord. He is that ignorant, and you know it, and so do I."
Yeah. The thing is, a lot of people don't even understand about Donald Trump, and they were saying that why a lot of white supremacists, flock to him is most people haven't even heard of Lee Atwater. and the speech that he made about the Southern strategy.
But most people have forgotten that Hillary Clinton, while Bill was the president, described young black and brown males as super predators who needed to be brought to heel. And when they attacked her, confronted her with that a couple of months ago, she said, well, perhaps that was a poor choice of words. No, it was a poor choice of thought. It was a poor choice of philosophy. It was a poor way of considering, of thinking about young black and brown males. I am absolutely furious at that remark and at her response when she was corrected for making it.
Well,
She has not given up
on
on
this
that
channel,
philosophy. Make no mistake about that.
Well, on this channel, we showed that comment. We also showed that she worked for Barry Goldwater and was proud of it, saying she was a Goldwater girl. So we aren't big fans of Hillary Clinton at all, because I'm very upset what she has been a part of in Libya, and I know the whole story behind that.
Well, and if you get Hillary, you'll get Billary.
Pretty much.
It will be a Billary 4 years, and we can't afford another Billary 4 years. We really can't.
And it's like,
And we can't afford Donald T. Rump.
so Jane, what are we supposed to do? I mean, because me personally, I don't approve of none of them. I don't at all. And the only person I was, saying they would be, I think would be a good person, and maybe some people don't agree with it, but Bernie Sanders seemed like he had a decent heart. Okay, but these two, no, they were best of friends anyway. I mean, you got pictures of them being the best of friends. I mean,
Yeah. Let's talk about something more important than these two fools. Let's let's talk about what should we do about this now. I'll tell you what to do. Join those young black women who are saying that black lives matter. And to justify doing that, you need to remember, and I'm sure you know what Frederick Douglass said. He said, and I'm going to read this because I don't want to get it wrong. If there is no struggle, there is no progress. Those who profess to favor freedom and yet deprecate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. He also said, and see if this applies to the United States, where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them, neither persons nor property will be safe. You and I are not safe as long as we allow this society where justice is denied, where poverty is enforced, where ignorance prevails, and where any one class is made to feel that society is an organized conspiracy to oppress, rob, and degrade them. That's what's going on in this country. And you and I are not safe, and neither are those who want to perpetuate the myth of race. We've got to get rid of the myth of race. And if you think I'm lying about that, then you need to get the book, The Myth of Race, by Robert Wald Sussman. And this is just the last sentence of the last paragraph of the last page of that book. Biologically, Homo sapiens is one race. It is only by recognizing this fact and understanding its history that we might one day have a society in which all people are treated with dignity, equality, and kindness, regardless of their ethnicity or culture. If we don't start teaching that paragraph to students in the public, private, and parochial schools in this country, we will continue to fail our students and to fail our citizens and to fail our country.
But Jane, one thing I want to add to that, we about standing up against race and destroying the social construct of race within the black community. I'm one myself, stands up against that all the time. And the more you stand up, the more you speak up against and bring truth, not lies, and facts, the more you're gonna have more pushback from not even the elite, but you have a lot of poor white people that feel you're trying to be quote unquote racist to them, but to say that, wait a minute, we just need to be treated fairly. It's not like we trying to say we want to overrule you, we want to give you cut out your jobs because you have a white sounding name. We're not saying that we want to give you longer prison sentences because you're white. We just want to be treated equally and fairly, and it's always, well, you guys just want too much. And it brings a lot of anger. And then now you look at the situation with Donald Trump is talking about the Muslims and all that's going on. And now you look at the different things that's going on with the hate groups. And now they're talking about dipping bullets in pigs' blood and talking about they're going to do all these different things to different people. Why do they think that's not going to come to a head in this country eventually. Because what I see, Jane, it's not about to be good in this country because a lot of people are tired. They're tired of it. They're tired of being disenfranchised. They're tired of feeling like you don't care about nobody. Even the media themselves, and I'm against the media a lot. Even how they report things is clearly on racial lines.
The media made Donald Trump what he is today. They have given him $2 billion worth of free campaign ads on the media. You need to think about that. The media is part of this problem. The media could have changed this situation. You mentioned white people, poor white people, not wanting to put up with this anymore. The reason Martin Luther King Jr. had to be killed was not because he was fighting racism. The people at the top of this pyramid know how to defeat people because of racism. They don't want to change the level of racism. They want to increase the level of racism because it pits one group against another over something that you can't change. The reason he had to die was he and Malcolm X were coming together before they were both killed. And when Martin Luther King Jr. organized and ran the Poor People's March on Washington, he signed his own death warrant, as far as I'm concerned. He had to die because at that point it was obvious that he and Malcolm X were going to join together, and that force would have been so great that they could have changed the way the economic situation is in this country. They could have, and the people at the top knew it, and so they had to go. Now, I know that people will say, well, she's a conspiracy theorist. No, I'm just not a fool. I've lived long enough to watch this kind of stuff happen. I was old enough to know when Hitler came to power and how he got power and how he worked on people's emotions and people's fear and people's anger about members of the Jewish faith. And that's how he got the power he got and how he used it. And how he used that same power to intimidate people in this country. I remember when 400 Jewish children were sent here on a ship during the Second World War to save their lives. And people in this country, members of the American Legion, and some other groups got to their congressmen and said, do not let that ship come to these shores. Send those children back where they came from. And they did. And those 400 Jewish children perished because of the ignorance of the American populace. That should never have happened.
Now, you mentioned in Martin Luther.
The kind of things that,
Oh, go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, go ahead. Go ahead.
The kinds of things that are happening today in this country are not new and unique. They are the kinds of things that have happened all over the world for hundreds of years, but certainly in this country for the last 400. Now, I feel horrible amounts of sympathy for the people who were killed in Orlando last week. What an absolutely unacceptable thing to do. It's terrible. However, we keep hearing people in the media say, this is the worst massacre that's ever happened in the United States of America. Have they forgotten the Meadow Massacre? Have they forgotten Tulsa, where black people were killed? Have they forgotten Wounded Knee? But you see, we didn't consider those people, so it was all right to kill them. Those were large massacres. That was over 120 people in the Mountain Meadow Massacre, destroyed by the Mormons in that area because they didn't want that wagon train with all those people in Utah. So they simply went out and killed them. Did you know about the Mountain Meadow Massacre? Did you ever hear of the Mountain Meadow Massacre? Do you think you should have heard about the Mountain Meadow Massacre? It was worse than what happened in Orlando last week. But we don't even teach about it in history. What happened in Tulsa to that black community, that was as worse than what happened in Orlando last week. Certainly, Wounded Knee was worse than what happened in Orlando last week. But that was white on color crime. I'm never finished. You don't have enough time. I'll never be finished. I am so absolutely disgusted at the way this thing is being treated. You're going to call this anti-terrorism? What happened there is homophobia. And it isn't the first time it's happened. Only we don't kill that many at a time. I remember the young man who was found hanging on a deer fence in Wyoming several years ago, Matthew Shepard. And some people came along on their bicycles and saw some clothing hanging on a fence. And they went over and looked at the clothing, and it was a young man, Matthew Shepard. He had been beaten about the head and neck by several men with their revolvers and hung on a deer fence to die because he was homosexual.
Yeah, I remember.
That was a massacre of that young man. Oh yeah. Hey, you see, but But that was homophobia. It was called homophobia. What happened this week? We need the word terror. So we will take whatever happens and call it an act of terrorism. What happened in Orlando last week was not an act of terrorism. It was an act of homophobia. And it was sending a message to everybody, do not pal around with this kind of people. Even though the man who did it was probably homosexual
Yeah,
himself.
he was
And
closeted.
hated what he was. Hated what he was, so he hated what he saw himself in others. But we'll call it terrorism if we can, because we need as many things to hang on the hook of terrorism as we can possibly get if we're going to have a war, another war in the Middle East. And Hillary says there's some good business to be done in the Middle East.
Yeah, it's warmongering. That's all they want to do. So it seems to me that right now is, and I've never seen this before, but it seems to me that a lot of people within white America are really being fearful of, that's why they gravitate to Donald Trump, because they fear of their dominance with the Hispanic community, and they fear like their lives, I guess, for what's happening with Arabs, because you got to think about it. Let's keep it real. I believe in keeping it real. I'm going to do that. If you go to people's countries who's not doing you nothing, and you kill up their whole families who has nothing to do with terrorism, it's going to make everyday people like just have this hatred to want to respond. Like, what, they don't understand that. That's why they always say that, well, black people going to do something to us. Well, look what you've been doing for the past 400 years. Look what you've been doing today. And we still haven't really done anything, but you fear it. So it seems like when Malcolm said,
But you have done something that they take personally.
what's that?
You have survived, and you have succeeded greatly, many of you, in spite of all the obstacles we place in your path. At the same time that we have called you less than white, the members of the white color group. That many particularly white males take that they take it personally as an insult to themselves, that you are able to be on this television show, you are able to have this kind of power, and you're black. And they don't, and they're white. What's going on here? There must be something wrong with them, and in order to make that not true, they'll say there's something wrong with you. Right now, white males are really uncomfortable in this country, and have been for about the last 15 years, because of affirmative action. They're quite certain that affirmative action, and I hear this all the time, white men are the ones who are being discriminated against in this country today. That's nonsense. White lawmakers allowed affirmative action to be enforced because they knew that the major beneficiaries of affirmative action policies were going to be their white wives and daughters and sisters.
Amen.
And they have been the major beneficiaries of the affirmative action policies. Make no mistake about that. Now, the reason, if you haven't read the book, The Birth Dearth by Ben Wattenberg, have you read it?
No, ma'am.
All right. The Birth Dearth is a book written by a man who was a member of the American Enterprise Institute, an ultra-conservative right-wing think tank, which gives advice to presidents of the United States. Ben Wattenberg's book says, the major problem confronting this country today is there aren't enough white babies being born in the United States of America. If we don't do something about this and do it immediately, we white people will lose their numerical majority in the United States, and this will no longer be a white man's land. Now, he says there are 3 things we can do to solve this problem. Number 1, we can pay women to have babies, as they have been doing in Western European nations for years. Then he says, and these are his words, not mine, unfortunately, we would have to pay women of all colors to have babies, so we don't want to do that. He says the second thing we could do is increase the number of legal immigrants allowed into this country every year. Then he says, unfortunately, the majority of those wanting to come to this country today are people of color, so we don't want to do that. Then he says, and this is the one that scares me and ought to scare every female in the United States. The third thing we can do is remember that 60% of the fetuses that are aborted every year are white. If we could keep that 60% alive, that would solve our birth dearth. Now, what does he want to do with the other 40% of those fetuses? He doesn't mention that. Mm-hmm. He only mentions that 60% of the fetuses that are aborted every year are white. We need to keep those alive. Now, if that doesn't explain to you the right to life movement and the absolute determination to do away with women's rights to abortion, if that doesn't explain to you Dinosaurus T. Rump's complaint about all those people coming in over our southern border who happen to be people of other than the white color group. If that doesn't explain all that to you, I don't know what will. You need to take a look at that book and read it and see if I am reading it with jaundiced eyes. Because when I see something that looks racist, I think, well, if it looks like a duck, it quacks like a duck, and it waddles like a duck, it's probably a duck. Mr. Donosaurus T. Rump is undoubtedly a racist. We can't afford that. We can, and the people who are following him, you need to, here's something else you need to remember. The number of hate groups in this country has exploded since Barack Obama became President of the United States. White males in this country are fully aware that within 30 years, at our present rate, within 30 years, white people will be in the numerical minority in the United States of America. And we're scared to death that when that happens, people of those other color groups are going to want to treat us the way we have wanted to treat them. Now, the way to avoid that being ugly is to change the way white members of the white color group treat members of other color groups today in order to prepare for a better future than we've had in the past. You didn't ask me to give a speech, did you? I charge a lot of money for this generally.
No, like I said, hey, I stay quiet and I let my guests speak. That's what they're here to do. But
Okay, that's what I did.
if this fear, and yes, I mean, because Donald Trump is running his campaign on white fear. I see that completely. So if you have so much fear of loss of dominance, fear talking about your jobs, why is it that you want to blame everybody else for the crap that you done? Because last time I checked, white people own the corporations that send the jobs to China and Mexico and everything else. Because last time I checked, white people run the criminal justice system, because all of a sudden now you want to look at the war on drugs because white kids are being caught up with crystal meth and heroin and getting these sentences. Now it's all of a sudden prison reform. As long as it's black people, Hispanics, and people of color going to jail for 20 and 30 years, it was fine to be on that plantation. So why is it they always got to do that? It's the blacks, it's the Native Americans, it's everybody else but them. But yet they tell us, you guys need to take personal responsibility for your community and the things that you do. Why come they don't do that?
We don't teach people to take responsibility for the things they do. We teach people to justify and to blame. We find somebody to blame something on. We can't take the white race would be destroyed if they ever stand up and say, here's what we did, here's what we're doing, here's what we're not going to do in the future, and we want to make restitution to those we have damaged. We can't afford to do that. So what we're going to do is just continue the damaging. People in the Native American culture look 7 generations into the future before they make a decision. People in the white color group in this country think half a minute into the future before they make a decision. They make decisions based on a lack of knowledge and mostly on prejudice and mostly on their so-called education, which isn't education. That's how we make decisions. That's why white people make decisions. We cannot understand the people who wrote the Constitution because they were looking far into the future. And we are not accustomed to doing that. In this country, we want instant gratification. We want instant gratification, instant communication, and even instant salvation.
Now, I saw a video, and it was a short clip of a speech that you gave. And you asked, it was a panel, nothing but white people, and you asked one question: how many of you do want to be black? And it's like nobody answered.
No, I didn't say that. No, that's not what I said, because I wouldn't ask them that. I said to them, well, every white person in this room who would like to spend the rest of his or her life being treated the way we white people have treated people of color in this country, in general, as a society, if you'd like that for you and you're white, please stand. And then I waited, and nobody stood. And then I said, you didn't understand the question. If you're white and you'd like to be treated for the rest of your life the way we treat people of color in this country, please stand. Nobody stood. They know how we treat people of color. They know what's happening. They know it's ugly. They know they don't want it for themselves. But they are willing to allow it to happen to people of color on a daily basis. That says something about this being a Christian nation. Do unto others. Evidently we think do unto others and do it first.
Well, personally, I don't even like American Christianity at all, because how is it that you can enslave people, steal their resources, treat them as the way you're speaking about, and yet you're going to go to church and say hallelujah and praise the Lord? I'm sorry, I just don't.
I'll tell I'll tell you how we white Christians can do that. We can do it the way this white woman said to me several years ago, and I'll never forget it, and she'll never forget me. She said, I don't dislike black people. When I see one, I just say to myself, there, but for the grace of God, go I. She thinks that her skin color and her rights to abuse those who are not of her skin color are by the grace of God. If you have constructed a God in your mind, an old white, gray bearded man who looks like Charlton Heston playing Moses, and you have constructed a holy family in the Middle East in which the mother has pale skin, blonde hair, and blue eyes, in which the baby looks like the little Pillsbury Doughboy, you have constructed something that you can relate to when you pray, and that's somebody who looks like you. That is all a lie. It says in the Bible that Jesus had feet of bronze and kinky woolly hair. Have you seen outside the black church a Jesus who looked like that? Because I haven't. And I've gone to church regularly until I finally decided, wait a minute, until the minister came out to my house and said, Jane, would you rather not come to church anymore? And I said, why not? And he said, because you disturb the people sitting around you. I said, oh, because I use mother and parent instead of father in my prayers and in the songs. I change the songs, the hymns as I sing. And he says, yes, that disturbs the people around you. So I say, well, I would hope it would make them think in another way. You see, God is a spirit and has neither color nor gender. But we have been led to believe that God looks like, Jesus looks like the little Pillsbury Doughboy when he couldn't have. It was biologically impossible.
So I'm gonna ask you a hard question. Do you think white Americans can follow their version of Christianity and be the true Christians that Jesus said they should be?
Jesus would have an awful hard time in the United States of America. In the first place, he'd have that strange color and that strange hair, and he'd look like an Arab. In the second place, he'd be wearing those strange clothes. And in the third place, he wouldn't be saying, do unto others as you would have others do unto you. He would be saying what he learned in Chinese philosophy, which was treat others the way they want to be treated. Not treat others the way you want to be treated. Treat others the way as they want to be treated. And in order to find out how those others want to be treated, you have to ask them. Then you have to listen to their answer. Then you have to do what they ask you to. Do unto others as others would have you do unto them. But we have twisted that to make it something we can use as a power play. When I treat somebody a certain way, I can say, well, if it's good enough for me, why isn't it good enough for you? It isn't good enough for that other person just because it's good enough for me. I have a feeling that you don't want to be treated the way I want to be treated. I have a feeling that when you walk up to a door, you don't want me, little old gray-haired lady, walk up and open it for you as if you weren't able to do it. It used to be that I would open the door for myself because I didn't need somebody to help me. Now when I walk up to a door and it's heavy and they're getting heavier because I'm getting weaker, I'm perfectly happy to have somebody step forward and open it for me. And I say, thank you very much, because he isn't treating me the way he wants to be treated. He's treating me the way he thinks I want to be treated. And he's right. Treat people the way they want to be treated. You have to be willing to communicate with them. And when you communicate with others, you are less likely to be prejudiced toward them. But if you can keep people from talking together, keep people from realizing that we're all members of the same race, we're all members of the family of man, and the Bible talks about the family of man, it doesn't talk about the family of all these different colors. It talks about the family of man, and we are all members of the same race. When you can get people to thinking about others as their relatives, you're one of my relatives, whether you like it or not, and I will not allow people to damage my relatives. I will not allow people to incarcerate, to discriminate against my relatives. I won't allow it. I will not allow people to treat my relatives unjustly, and you're one of them. Whether you like it or not, that's the way it is.
Now, let's talk about Dr. King here for a minute. A lot of times we hear a lot of white people tell us as black people, and we get very angry about this, because we're at the point now we're not going to turn the other cheek anymore. We've done that already. It don't work. Okay.
Good idea.
We are sick and tired of hearing, well, if Dr. King was here, like, doggone, if you wouldn't have killed him, he would be here to tell us what we should maybe and should not do. But y'all put a bullet in that man when he was the most peaceful man that probably walked the face of the earth. But this is the thing. Why is it they feel they can hijack Dr. King's legacy and act like he's the person you got black people should be following. I'm not on the plantation. We on a plantation. You don't tell us who our hero was supposed to be. If we like the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, or we like Nat Turner or Marcus Garvey, we can like them. Why is it they feel like Dr. King should be the one we should follow based on what they say?
Because he's dead. He doesn't have it. They thought, the powers that be thought that if they killed him, that'd take care of the problem. They made him a martyr. They gave him more strength dead than he would ever have had alive. And they weren't smart enough to figure that out. They should have done what Native Americans do. They should have thought 7 generations into the future and realized that if you killed this man, who wasn't all about black, he was about making everybody not equal, but treating everybody equitably. It says in the Constitution, it doesn't say we're all equal in the Constitution. It says we are guaranteed equitable treatment under the law. You and I will never be equals. I will never be as tall as you are. I will never be as strong as you are. I will never know what you know about racism. I'll never know what you know about being male. I'll never be as young as you are. However, I am guaranteed equitable treatment under the law. You and I are guaranteed equitable treatment under the law, and that's the reason you have to be careful this year, because we are not going to have equitable treatment under the law if the wrong thing happens now. White people are scared to death that if there's one black man who's bright enough to be president of the United States and who is such a good community organizer that he could organize the communities all over the United States and get the presidency, they're scared to death that there are a whole bunch of other black men and women who might be able to do the same thing. And there are. And instead of being afraid of them, instead of not wanting them to have power, we should embrace one another and say, let's get this together. We can make this country what the founding fathers said it should be. They were racist too in their way because they were ignorant about race. They were ignorant about skin color, but they weren't as ignorant about people today are, because today it's ignorance plus power plus fear. And Donald Trump is trading on every one of them. And so is Hillary.
Speaking of Donald Trump, he has the slogan, "Make America Great Again." But when you ask his supporters, what does that mean and what time period are you talking about? I can't remember a time period that's been extremely great for black people. Maybe you can explain
he's
that.
Talking about the same thing that Ronald Reagan did when he said, we're going to go back, we're going to take us back to the 50s when men were men and women were glad of it. He didn't say when men were men, but everybody who listened to him knew that he was talking about, oh yeah, that's back before civil rights, that's back before women's rights, that's back before really, really good, strong unions. We're going to go back to the times when white men ran the show, period. And when people worked for slave wages. We are progressing backward rapidly where people of color and women are concerned. Right suddenly, this last week or so, they passed legislation that says we will draft women in the military from now on. Why? Because we're putting so many of our black and brown males in prison that we're going to have women do the jobs killing people of color that we expect black and brown males to do before.
And it made me angry because I have a daughter that's, be turning 17, will be a senior in high school. And for my daughter to have to be forced to register for the draft, that's a problem for me. That is a problem.
I registered for the draft and it made the people at the draft were really uncomfortable. They said, you can't register. I said, why not? They said, because you're a woman. I said, that's not the reason I can't register. I can't register because I'm too old. However, I want to register for the draft. They were quite upset by that. I said, how dare you deny me the right to register for the draft? At one time, we weren't allowed to. Now we're going to be forced to.
Correct.
Because of the women's movement. And I'll never forget the white woman who said to a black woman during the exercise at Drake University several years ago, this white woman said to this black woman, you should join the women's movement. And she said, don't you talk to me about the women's movement and women's rights while your foot is on my husband's neck. Case closed. Ooh. Yeah, see, some interesting things. Yeah, some interesting things get said in situations where you have given people of color power because of the color of their eyes, and white folks because of their colorless eyes, no power. And you watch the whole thing happen, and it is like, okay, this is how society works. And this is how we keep white people in power. And this is how we empower white males. And you do it by empowering white females, who will be in their shadow, but they'll be powerful because of their white males.
Now, let me ask you a question. Do you think feminism and this women's rights movement, which really don't include black women, and I show plenty of cases of that, how it don't include black women.
They might as well have been wearing signs that said black women need not apply.
Might as well. Do you think feminism
Yeah.
is the female wing of white supremacy?
No, I think feminism, no, I don't think it's the female wing of white supremacy. I think it is the tool. I think white women were being and are being used by white males to perpetuate the situation. But when I think of white supremacy, I think of David Duke and Lee Atwater.
Mm-hmm.
But not, those two aren't that much alike because Lee Atwater apologized profusely before he died. He said, I was wrong. God help me, I was wrong. He was wrong in what he did. David Duke hasn't come to that conclusion yet and may never come to that conclusion. He believes firmly in the supremacy of white males. And see, this is so different. I can't understand how people can be so adamant in view of evidence to the contrary. How can you look at these fantastic people of color who are making these tremendous contributions and have over the last 400 years in this country and before, and deny their intelligence, deny their greatness, deny their humanity? How can you do that? What kind of mental calisthenics do you go through to get that done? That's got to be hard work. Justifying what we have done to people in other color groups has to be extremely hard work. It takes a lot of time, a lot of energy. It costs a lot of money.
And then they talk about the thing white guilt. Well, the guilt comes from all the wrongdoing you're doing. I mean, there is a God up there that will convict you of sin. Stop doing wrong and you'll feel guilty.
It isn't up to God to solve this. It's up to human beings to solve this. And I don't lay guilt on people. I lay responsibility on people.
Mm-hmm.
We white folks are responsible for what we've done, for what we teach, for the way we behave, the way we walk, the way we talk, the way we take things from other cultures and claim them as our own and pretend that we invented them. There's no sense in calling it guilt because that doesn't work. Place responsibility where it belongs. Guilt is not worth your time. Don't do it because people can go and pick up whatever their holy book is and read themselves into righteousness. Guilt doesn't work. But they can't read themselves out of responsibility.
So
that's what we need to be.
So, we talk about cultural appropriation, and they just get angry when you mention that. Oh, no, white people did this and white people did that. And I'm like, wait a minute. When we do this stuff, it's ghetto, it's thuggish, it's trash. But when y'all do it, oh, my God, it's trending. Look at Kylie's hair. That kind of stuff. Or the black woman, oh, it's nasty.
Wait a minute. Here's one of the solutions for that. The next time you're riding down the street in a car and a white man is driving and you come to a stop sign, a stoplight, and he stops, you say, hey, you're being controlled by a black man right there. Because a black man invented the stoplight.
Correct.
When somebody orders peanut butter on their toast in the morning, you say, you're being controlled by a black man because a black man developed peanut butter. Mm-hmm. When somebody comes into your presence who has just come out of the hospital and had a blood transfusion using stored plasma, you say to him, you can thank my black brothers that you were able to get a blood transfusion using stored plasma. They won't understand that because they don't know those things, because they didn't have to learn about those things. When you turn on a light switch, turn on a light with a light switch, you have to say, thank you, black man, because many of the components for generating and transmitting electricity were invented by black males. Now, we haven't taught those things in school, so you don't understand, you don't realize how fantastically intelligent people of color, other than the white color group, have been over the years. 50% of the foods on your supermarket shelves and in your refrigerator, in your pantry at home, came to us from societies of people of color. White folks take those things, enjoy those things, grow those things, sell those things, make money of those things without ever saying to themselves, I wouldn't have this capability if it hadn't been for the efforts of people of color who came before me. We forget about that. We forget that people in Africa, in the kingdom of Kush, were smelting ore before white folks reached the shores of the United States of America. In Africa!
Mm-hmm.
That's not the history that we learn generally. That isn't even what we learned during Black History Month. We should not have Black History Month. We should have Black history as part of American history every day that history is taught in the schools in the United States of America. Black history should be a regular part of the history class, not something we do for 1 month of the year. We have 1 month for Black history and 8 months for white history. Give me a break. Do you see why I'm not particularly well loved in my community?
I can definitely see why you're not loved in your community because I'm not a part of your community, and they hate me just for saying half of the stuff that you're saying, and you saying you don't care.
You wouldn't dare say the things that I say. You'd have been dead a long time ago if you said the things that I say. And people say to me, and I really get tired of this question, some black person will say to me, why does a person who looks like you care about this? Because I'm a member of your race. The human race began in sub-Saharan Africa 140,000 to 280,000 years ago, and it began with black women. And for many years there were nothing but black women because they reproduced asexually. And then as a result of mutation of the genes, the first black male was born. So when I'm arguing with a man, I just remember I'm arguing with a mutant. And I don't get upset by it. However, you need to remember that you and I are members of the same race, and what hurts you hurts me, and I'm not going to allow it. What hurts your children is what has hurt my children for the last 50 years. The treatment that my children have received as a result of being my offspring, not because of the color of their skin, not because of the color of their eyes, but because of the physical characteristic over which they have no control, which is their mother. They have been treated in absolutely brutal and horrendous ways for the last 50 years because of me. I don't know what it's like to be black, but I know what it's like to be treated unfairly on the basis of somebody else's ignorance. And that's what it's about. Prejudice, according to my sweatshirt, is an emotional commitment to ignorance. Nathan Rutstein said that, and he was absolutely right. Prejudice is an emotional commitment to ignorance. People have to hate me because what if I'm right? What if I'm right?
Well, see, they would never debate you because if they would debate you, you're going to destroy them and they're going to look stupid. So they rather call you names and hate you for ignorant reasons. They know better.
You wouldn't like to get my emails, believe me.
Oh, it'd probably be fun reading your emails. I'm pretty sure they call you all kind of, names, in lover and everything else. I'm pretty sure they call you, like really.
Oh, yeah. I've had lots and lots of threats against my life, and it's reached the point now, when I go on a college campus, there are always those 3 little fraternity boys sitting about in the 3rd row, and they're talking while I am, and I finally stop talking, and I say, look, fellas, I know what you're talking about. Let me tell you something. I know you want me dead because of what I do to eliminate some of the racism in this country. If you shoot me because of what I do, you might make a martyr out of me, and you might have to spend the rest of your life celebrating Jane Elliott Day once a year. Now, do you want to do that? And then they all do this. I say, that's right, fellas, you don't, so keep me alive on your campus. That's the only thing that keeps me alive. They made a martyr of Martin Luther King Jr., and he will live forever. Nobody wants to do that with an old gray-haired white woman.
Yeah, he got a statue in Washington D.C. Shoot, they do that to you. You have a statue too. So I mean,
if they put up a statue of me, I hope they don't use a Chinese model, because that's what they use for Martin Luther King Jr., and it doesn't look at all like Martin Luther King Jr. It's really bad. They really should take it down and start over. And they knew it when they put it up. They knew that didn't look like Martin Luther King Jr. They made a really good one, whoever did Abraham Lincoln, but they made a really bad one of Martin Luther King Jr. And those things are not mistakes. And if people realized that Barack Obama was not our first black president, that Abraham Lincoln was 1/3 Cherokee, 1/3 black African American, and 1/3 white, we wouldn't be praising Abraham Lincoln either. We don't talk about that.
mm-hmm. No, we don't. Not at all. Not at all.
No. We mustn't do that.
No, because we have to keep the white supremacy train going. We cannot rock the boat. If you rock the boat, you a problem. I'm a troublemaker. Sure, I'm a troublemaker for having you on here. So I know I'm gonna get the emails just as
Oh,
much
you
as you
are.
get them. But I love it. I love it. Threaten me. I get off to it. I'm gonna show you emails. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm not gonna hide them. I'm gonna say this guy with this name said this to me. I don't. I'm gonna expose you. I love to do that.
I just hit delete. That's the joy of the computer. I just hit delete. When I read it, I think, okay, I don't need that. Delete, delete, delete. So these people who are sending me these hateful, hateful things need to know
But they,
that they're wasting their time and their energy and their electricity, because I don't read them anymore. They can't. There is no new and novel way to tell me that I'm a nigger lover. And there's no way that there's. When I get these letters that call me bitch, I have to remember, bitch for me is an acronym for being in total control, honey.
yeah, I like
And
that. That's
yeah,
funny.
when people see me as being in control, that's when they call me the B word. And that's what they do to all women. When women are in control, men resort to name calling, and it's usually the B word. So, hey, it means you're upset because I'm being in total control, honey, and that takes all the power out of the B word.
Well, when a person doesn't have a logical response to you, they start name calling. So you already won the argument the moment they call you your name.
When they
So
do that, they're in their child ego state,
mm,
and during the exercise, I get into my parent ego state. That means they are forced into their child ego state, and they become childlike in front of your very eyes. I don't give them the opportunity to get into their adult ego state. And if you don't know anything about transactional analysis, you'd ought to read a book about transactional analysis, and then you could understand what Donald Trump is. He spends most of his time in either his parent or his child ego state, usually child. When he's making fun of people and doing all these ridiculous gestures, he's in his child ego state. You can spot it immediately. And the minute you've read this material, it's absolutely amazing.
so Miss Jane, can you tell us, do you have any other speaking engagements coming up that maybe someone could attend?
No, but if I have a few coming up, but they're few and far between because obviously the things that I'm saying are not what people want to pay to hear.
Okay.
Period. That's the way it is. I would love to spend 2 days a week for the rest of my life, as short or as long as it is, talking about the advantage of being a member of the human race. I did a speech to a college several weeks ago, and after it was over, and I was out in the hall talking to these kids who want to do selfies, blah, 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 for an hour, and then this young, skinny, thin white male came out, and young, and both his arms were out like this, and he's going, Jane Elliott, Jane Elliott. I said, what's going on? He said, you gave me more freedom than I've ever had in my life. I don't ever have to live up to this superiority myth for the rest of my life. It's all right for me to be just like everybody else. I said, thank you very much. I'm glad you're going to do that. Go forth and multiply. If we could just get enough white males to say, I don't have to live up to this false image of superiority. I can relax and live a long time. But white males die 10 to 20 years before their white wives do because of the stress we put on them because of this trying to live up to an unreal image of what they are. Black males, on the other hand, in my estimation, are living with PTSD. Only it isn't post-traumatic stress disorder. It's present traumatic stress disorder. In my estimation, they are in a war zone on a daily basis, from before they're born until after they die. And
Uh,
we've got to stop this war in this country, because this is war on my relatives, and I want it stopped. I want to declare peace in this country. And if it's peace at any price, if it's at the price of overthrowing what we call a government, which isn't governing, then that's what we'll have to do.
so I have one last question for you. You want to speak about Chicago and the violence that happens there in Chicago. We have to admit the federal government not doing nothing about it. The state
Well,
government,
yes, they are.
what are
Yes,
they?
they are doing something about it. They're perpetuating it. They are
Well,
perpetuating it. The only thing necessary for the perpetuation of evil is for good people to do nothing. As long as we do nothing about what's going on there and make young males of color responsible for what's happening, instead of looking at the society and what it has told young men of color that they are capable of doing and are not capable of doing. As long as we do that and convince white people that we're telling the truth, and convince a whole lot of people of color that we're telling the truth, because we've got the power, so we must be right. As long as we do that, we can have this kind of problem. We don't have to have this kind of problem. We could put a stop to it. We could say to the police, we're going to put you through the blue-eyed, brown-eyed exercise. We're going to teach you how it feels to be on the receiving end of that which you hand out so happily. We're going to put a stop to this, because we are not going to have citizens of the United States living in a war zone. And that's what we're doing. We've got to put a stop to this war on people of color. That's what we're running right now. We've been running it long enough now. What's your question?
Well, I would love to be a fly on the wall if you give one of these police departments a blue-eyed, brown-eyed test. I would like to sit there and watch that. Because they need it.
I've had policemen in the exercise, and they go nuts. They go absolutely crazy. They don't know what to do. How dare you treat me this way? Why not? I can treat you any way I want to, because you got the wrong color eyes, fool. Now sit down and shut up. Cut the duck up. I don't want to listen to it. And they're like, when you do the exercise and you get a chance to watch members of the white color group being subjected to that to which they have subjected members of the other color groups for an hour. The first 15 minutes almost, it just shocks them. And the first half hour, then they go through those 5 stages of grief. First, they argue. Then first they deny it. Then they argue. Then they try to bargain. Then they get depressed. And then they accept it. And you watch the 5 stages of grief happen in a corporation setting, in a public setting, and you watch these so-called adult white males become what they have accused white women and men and people of color of being all their lives. And you can make it happen I do it I did it in 5 minutes with a group of Rotarians in Osage, Iowa. And one of them never forgot it literally till the day he died. He would see me coming toward him on the street, and he'd cross the street so I wouldn't get close enough to see his eyes.
Now, are you mentoring any other white people to do exactly what you're doing? The reason why I'm saying this is because one day, it said, the Lord be ready for you, but you got all that knowledge you have and everything that you have learned. Are you trying to pass on that legacy to someone else who you feel that has the same fire and desire to change, society? Are you doing that?
I've tried to do that. I've tried to bring them here to my little church next door, which is now a guest house. We live out in the country because they wouldn't sell us a decent house in town. When we moved to Osage, that was fun. I brought 2 groups here in the summertime and tried to teach them how to do what I do. And by the time they'd gotten through the 2nd day of the training, they say, I can't do this. This is too hard. I couldn't treat people the way you do. I don't have that kind of attitude or I can't behave that way. They can't do it. You can't ask a person of color to do it because white people would say you're pushing your own agenda. You can't train a man to do it because women would never put up with from a man what they will put up with from me, because they heard all that stuff from men before. So I can't do it with a male. I could teach white women to do it, but I'm too kind, I'm too generous, I'm too thoughtful, I'm too loving, I'm too Christian. They got all these excuses for not wanting to be what they are. Every white woman knows how to do what I do. Make no mistake about this, because we teach our children how to do what I do. Only we don't base it on eye color, we base it on skin color. So it's not that people don't know how to do it. I have written a teacher's manual, a manual for people who want to do this work. And it outlines every single thing you have to do and say. It outlines exactly how to do this. I sell it for $500. Nobody wants to buy it. It includes a copy of the book, A Class Divided Then and Now, which explains the whole thing, and a copy of the DVD, The Eye of the Storm, which helps you to understand how to do this and why to do it. People don't want to do it. It's too difficult. It's not difficult to do it when you walk down the street or when you're working in a shop and some black person comes in and you have somebody follow them through the store. It isn't difficult to do that, but it's difficult to do this exercise openly and in a manner and to act the way people of color see you all day. For an hour and a half or 2 hours, you have to act openly, the way people of color see you acting all day when you don't think you're doing it. That's the first thing I learned the first day I did that exercise. I watched my brown-eyed third graders become what I have taught them to be. And all of a sudden, I realized why people of color might not trust me and might not like me, because of the way I behave and the way I treat those who are different from myself. And I'm not alone. I'm the majority of white people in the United States.
Well, just in my opinion, before we wrap up, I wish that we could replicate you times maybe 30 million within your group, and I think that would change America, literally, overnight.
Well, we could. Hey, you don't have to do that. All you have to do is hire 6 teachers at the 6th grade level, put them through the exercise, and then say, now you will use this exercise every year with your 6th graders. Every year, this will be part of the standard elementary curriculum. 6th grade is a good age to do it because they're old enough to know when to go to the bathroom, but they don't have to talk about it all the time yet like they do when they're freshmen. So you do it with 6th graders. And the 6th grade teacher puts every kid in the class do that exercise. Every 6th grade teacher in any school. We could change the level of idiocy and prejudice and discrimination in this country within 2 generations. There's not a doubt in my mind of what we could. Because I have watched what has happened with those kids who have gone through the exercise, who are now adults, who are saying things like, I don't say those things, and when people say those things around me, I either walk away or I say to them, I don't have to hear that. They refuse to tolerate the intolerable. And that's what Elie Wiesel said. We must not tolerate the intolerable. If it's intolerable for you, as one of my relatives, it's intolerable for me. I won't tolerate it.
Well, I definitely want to thank you, Jane, for joining us on the show today. I mean, this was a very interesting, conversation. I've learned a lot just listening to you. I'm pretty sure those, when they view this, they're going to definitely learn a lot. How can people get in contact with you if they possibly want to get the manual?
Oh, call me. No, don't call me. Don't call me. Whatever you
No,
do, don't call me.
no, email or something like that, Facebook, website.
Because I'll talk to you for an hour the way I have talked to this man for an hour, so don't do that. Just send an email to Elliott, Elliott dot BLIBRI at gmail.com. And that BLI is blue eye, brown eye. BL and the letter I. BR and the letter I at gmail.com.
Okay, make sure you, email Jane to, find out more information. If you are one of the people who watch and say, you know what, I want to learn from her and actually do this and actually change this country because it's in my heart to do so. Because some of you people who tell me, I'm not racist, I love black people. Well, actually go out and do the work. Don't just tell me about it. Do the work. Jane is a good person to go talk to where she can get you straight on doing the work.
Wait a minute. Hey, tell them to go to my website. Jane at janeelliott.com and download the printed materials. The set of typical statements that white folks make that think they aren't racist, the set of clarifications of those statements, the set of commitments to combat racism, and the bibliography. If they want to know what I know, and most of what I know I've learned from black and red and yellow and brown people, because white people don't know it. They don't know. You can't teach what you don't know. They don't know this. People of color do. Go to my website and download those printed materials and then do what the directions say. They can change their own behaviors. They can change their own willingness to believe the lie. But read the book, The Myth of Race.
All right, so make sure you go to and download the materials because I think a lot of white people do need to read that because certain things they say to us, we already know. It's like, oh, you racist. And they're like, well, how do they know? Well, I'm not going to tell you how I know, but Jane will tell you. So go to janeelliott.com, download the materials, read up on it, study it as you would study the Bible. So Jane, just thank you for joining us and sharing all your wisdom and knowledge with us. We definitely are honored to have you on.
Well, thank you for having me. I have enjoyed every minute of you listening to me.